She was just the nanny until the millionaire found out who the baby belonged to. Before we dive into this emotional story, tell me where you're watching from. I want to get to know you and see how far our stories are reaching. And if you're into intense romances, full of twists and heartwarming endings, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. That way, you help this space grow and encourage me to keep sharing stories that touch the soul. Lily Harrington arrived at the Alden house with a small suitcase, a thin coat, and a courage she didn't even know she still had. The mansion, imposing and silent, seemed to carry memories no one dared to touch. The air was cold, almost impersonal, as if every corner held a shelved story. The driver led her to the door, but Lily felt like she was stepping into a world where everything could either fall apart or bloom, and she still didn't know which side she'd land on. When the door opened, Ethan appeared first. A 6-year-old boy, skinny, shoulders hunched, eyes filled with a mix of curiosity and fear. He held a broken toy car in his fingers. Lily offered a gentle smile, kneeling to be at his level. "Hi, Ethan, I'm Lily. I'll be taking care of you from now on." He didn't reply, just studied her face as if trying to guess whether she would leave him too. His fragility struck something deep in Lily's soul. She held out her hand. Ethan hesitated, then took it. A fragile gesture of trust, almost a silent plea for stability. As she stepped into the living room, Lily noticed the lifelessness that filled the space. Lighting too cold, objects too perfect, silence too thick. There were no scattered toys, no drawings on the walls, no laughter lingering in the air. It was a wealthy house, but empty. A big house, but without warmth. Christopher Alden appeared shortly after. Elegant, rigid posture, calculating gaze. A man used to commanding rooms, companies, instant decisions. But there, in front of the new nanny, he just looked tired. "I hope it wasn't hard to find the house," he said, voice low, controlled. "It's all good," Lily replied kindly, hiding the nervousness she felt. "Ethan is a sweet boy." Chris glanced at his son briefly, and something tightened inside him. It was clear he wanted to be a better father, but didn't know how to get close without breaking the boy even more. Lily decided to start with small gestures. She prepared a simple snack, chatted with Ethan while he ate, let him show her the broken toy car. She worked on transforming the heavy silence into genuine connection. Within hours, Ethan was sitting next to her on the couch, leaning against her arm like he'd finally found a safe harbor. When Lily began telling an improvised story, the boy smiled, a shy smile, but real. It was as if a locked door inside him had opened just a little. Chris watched the scene from the half-open door. He didn't interfere, just observed. The look in his eyes was a mix of surprise and relief. He couldn't remember the last time Ethan had laughed like that. Maybe he'd never heard such a light laugh from his own son. That night, when Ethan fell asleep in Lily's arms, something that hadn't happened in weeks, she carefully placed him in bed and tucked the blanket around him as if protecting something precious. Chris showed up shortly after, walking slowly down the hallway. "He fell asleep quickly tonight," he remarked, voice softer than before. "He just needed someone close," Lily replied. "Children can feel when a house is sad." The words hit Chris hard. He looked away, swallowing an emotion he wasn't ready to face. "Thank you for today," he murmured, almost a whisper. "You've done more for him in a few hours than I've managed in months." "I just listened to what he can't say," Lily said. "Ethan is strong, Mr. Alden. He just needs presence and affection." Chris stared at Lily for a long few seconds, as if seeing something he didn't know existed. It wasn't just competence. It was heart. A humanity that had been missing from that house for a long time. It's Christopher. "You can call me Christopher," he said with an unexpected calm. Lily smiled. A sincere, pure smile, capable of lighting up the whole hallway. "Good night, Christopher." When he turned to leave, he realized that for the first time in months, the house didn't feel so empty. When he got to his office, he opened the door and leaned against the desk, taking a deep breath. Lily's presence had changed something invisible but powerful. It was as if she'd brought back a piece of life he had already given up on finding. That night, while Lily fell asleep in her new room, Christopher stayed awake, thinking about the young woman who had, in just one day, made Ethan smile. And though he wouldn't admit it, she had also stirred something inside him. Something he wasn't ready to face, but that had already begun to grow quietly. Christopher lingered in the hallway for long minutes after wishing Lily good night. There was a strange feeling in his chest, a light but persistent restlessness that kept him from walking away from the door of the room where she was staying. The mansion felt less cold that night, less heavy, as if someone had finally opened a window after years without air. Chris took a deep breath and tried to return to his routine, but sleep didn't come. Lily's presence had left a sweet, almost unsettling echo inside him. The next morning, Lily woke up early, the sun still shy as it slipped through the curtains of the room, freshly prepared for her. She tied her light blonde hair into a casual bun and walked silently down to the kitchen. When she opened the door, she found Chris already there, sitting at the table with a tablet in hand and a fresh cup of coffee beside him. He looked even more attractive in that domestic setting. Light blue dress shirt with sleeves rolled up, slightly messy light brown hair, tense eyes alternating between the tablet and the cup. Lily tried to retreat discreetly, but he looked up at that exact moment. "Good morning," Chris said, his voice lower than he intended. "Good morning," she replied, trying to hide the sudden blush. He gestured toward the coffee machine. "Just made it. It's fresh." "Thank you." Lily poured herself a cup and sat down a little farther away, but not far enough to prevent their eyes from meeting for long seconds. The entire kitchen seemed smaller, as if the atmosphere between them dictated the size of the space. Ethan walked in, still sleepy, and when he saw Lily, he ran to her. She hugged him naturally, as if she'd been part of that house for years. Chris watched the gesture with a mix of gratitude and quiet fascination. It was rare to see his son show affection so spontaneously. Throughout the day, small details began to draw them closer. Lily reorganized toys, read stories to Ethan, taught him new songs, and Chris observed quietly from a distance, always impressed by the lightness she brought. The way she held a children's book, how she tucked her hair behind her ear when focused, how she softened her voice to calm the boy. Every detail felt like an unintentional invitation to something he wasn't sure he was ready to feel. That evening, after putting Ethan to bed, Lily went to the kitchen to make some tea. When she turned on the light, she saw Chris leaning against the counter, staring out the window. His expression was distant, as if he were battling memories not allowed to surface. "Would you like me to make some tea for you too?" Lily asked gently. Chris turned slowly. "I'd like that." She prepared 2 cups of tea while he watched her in a silence so deep it seemed full of unspoken sentences. When she placed the mug in front of him, their fingers touched for a second that lasted longer than it should have. Lily pulled back, but Chris gripped the mug tighter than necessary, trying to mask the effect of that simple contact. "You've been important to Ethan," Chris said, breaking the silence. "He's lighter. I haven't seen him this well since everything changed." Lily sensed the weight in his voice and didn't press. "He just needed routine, and someone to really see him. And you see him." The words left Chris before he could think of the consequences. Her eyes lifted slowly. The tension between them settled in almost tangibly. Chris looked away for a moment, but then returned, caught in the soft intensity of Lily's gaze. "Sometimes I think you see things even I can't," he confessed, revealing a rare vulnerability. Lily felt her heart quicken. "I just pay attention," she replied softly. The next minutes were filled with silence, but it wasn't empty. It was heavy with emotions trying to stay hidden, yet beginning to seep through the cracks. Chris stepped toward her, not realizing he had. Lily stepped back but bumped into the counter. Their eyes met again, closer now, more exposed. The air between them thickened, warm, almost dangerous. "Lily," Chris murmured, as if her name had been stored inside him for a long time. She swallowed hard and replied in a low voice. Christopher, her saying his name hit him harder than he could hide. He lifted his hand, hesitant, as if to touch her face, but pulled back at the last second, fighting the impulse. Ethan started crying from his room, calling for Lily. The spell was broken. She rushed out, and Chris stayed in the kitchen alone, breathing deeply, trying to regain control, but unable to shake the feeling that something irreversible had begun. Lily calmed Ethan quickly, but as she returned to her room, she leaned against the closed door and slid down to the floor, trying to understand how just one look from him could stir her heart so deeply. And for the first time, she wondered if she could stay in that house without completely losing herself. Lily woke up the next day with the feeling that something had shifted, subtly but deeply. She could still feel the impact of Christopher's gaze from the night before, a gaze that seemed to reach inside her and find places no one had touched before. She tried to convince herself it had just been a moment of tension, but the truth was, when she came down the stairs and saw Chris quietly talking to Ethan on the couch, something inside her warmed in an unexpected way. Chris was kneeling in front of his son, showing him a children's book and trying to imitate the voices, something Lily had never imagined witnessing. He noticed her presence and smiled naturally, a smile so soft it almost disarmed her. "Good morning, Lily." The way he said her name seemed full of intention, but also carried a warmth she didn't quite know how to handle. Lily smiled back, trying to keep her composure. "Good morning, Christopher." Ethan ran to hug her, and Chris watched the gesture with a glimmer in his eyes, almost in awe of her ability to reach the boy's heart. After Ethan went back to playing, Chris approached slowly, as if afraid of startling her. "I wanted to thank you for yesterday," he said quietly, his grayish eyes locked on hers. "You have no idea how much it means to see my son sleep peacefully." Lily looked away for a moment, trying to hide her blush. "I only did what anyone would do." "Not anyone. You." He shouldn't have said that, but he did, and the world around Lily lost a little of its focus. The days that followed became a silent dance between the two. Lily helped Ethan with homework, and Chris would appear at the doorway just to watch them with an almost invisible smile. At night, she made tea, and he would always show up as if that small ritual was his only moment of peace. One night, after Ethan had gone to sleep, Lily was closing the curtains in the living room when she heard slow footsteps behind her. Chris was there, shirt sleeves rolled up, his face tired but gentle. "Lily, can I ask you something?" he said with a shyness that didn't match the man who ran an entire company. "Of course," she replied, turning slowly. "Why do you take such good care of others and so little of yourself?" The question caught her off guard. Lily took a deep breath. Her story wasn't simple or light, and she didn't know where to start. But Chris waited, just waited, without pushing. "Because maybe it's easier to take care of other people's pain than my own," she admitted, her voice almost a whisper. Chris took a few steps forward, close but still respecting her space. "If you ever want to tell me, I'll listen. And what about you?" Lily asked, gently shifting the focus. "You seem to carry a huge weight all the time. He took a deep breath, resting his hand on the edge of the table. I lost a lot trying to protect what was left. And in the end, I lost myself too. Lily felt her heart tighten. Christopher, he looked up, and what she saw there wasn't the millionaire or the boss or the powerful man. It was just a tired man, hurt, trying to rebuild himself. When you're around, he confessed, it feels like something falls back into place. Lily felt her legs weaken. The silence between them grew heavier, denser, almost irresistible. Chris raised his hand with extreme tenderness, as if asking permission to touch her face. She didn't pull away. The touch was light, just the tips of his fingers along her jawline, but it was enough for her to close her eyes for a moment. "I don't know if this is right," she murmured. "I don't either," he replied. "But I know it's real." When Lily opened her eyes, his were so close she could feel his warm breath, the soft scent of the coffee he always drank at night. There was a silent question in his gaze, and Lily answered without words, just leaning in a little more. Chris tilted his head and touched his lips to hers delicately, as if afraid a sudden move might break something precious. The kiss was slow, tense, full of restrained emotion. Lily felt his hand at the back of her neck, holding her carefully while she clutched his chest, feeling his heartbeat racing beneath his shirt. When they pulled apart, they both took a deep breath, like they had crossed an invisible line from which there was no return. "This changes everything," Lily said, her voice trembling. "I know," Chris replied, brushing her face again, "and I'm willing to face whatever comes if you are." Lily couldn't respond right away. Fear and hope battled equally within her. But before she could say anything, Ethan called her name from his room, breaking the moment and pulling them back to reality. Chris let her go, but stayed standing there in the living room, alone, heart pounding and a new certainty growing inside him. He didn't want to hide what he felt anymore. For the first time in years, he began to imagine a different future, one where Lily was by his side. But what neither of them knew was that this quiet, intense connection would be exactly what would make the fall much more painful when the outside world, cruel and watchful, finally discovered what was happening behind those walls. The morning after their first kiss, Lily woke up feeling light, as if the house had finally allowed a bit of happiness to breathe between its walls. Ethan was happier than ever, and Chris, though keeping his usual controlled posture, couldn't help the small smiles that appeared every time his eyes met hers. It was as if a silent pact had been formed between them, to live whatever they were feeling with care, without rushing, without interference. For a few days that delicate balance held. Soft conversations in the kitchen, lingering glances that spoke louder than words, small touches that seemed to spark the air between them. Chris made a point of coming home from work earlier, having dinner with her and Ethan, staying close as if discovering a new way of living. But everything collapsed on a Saturday afternoon. Chris had gone out to handle matters at the office. Lily was playing with Ethan in the backyard when she heard a car stop in front of the mansion. A tall, elegant woman with perfect blonde hair and a hard expression walked through the gate without asking permission. She wore an expensive dress and dark sunglasses that hid most of her face, but her arrogant posture revealed exactly who she was. Melissa Alden, Christopher's ex-wife. Lily felt her stomach drop. Melissa looked her up and down with unmistakable disdain. "So it's you," Melissa said, removing her sunglasses with a theatrical motion. Christopher's new distraction. Lily stood up slowly, instinctively placing herself between Melissa and Ethan. "I'm sorry, I think you're mistaken." Melissa laughed, a cold, calculated sound. "Mistaken? No, dear. I'm only seeing in person the nanny who managed to make my ex-husband forget who he really is." Before Lily could respond, Ethan ran inside, frightened. And from there, everything happened too fast. That very same day, photos taken from distorted angles began appearing online. Lily hugging Ethan, Lily laughing with Chris in the kitchen, Lily entering the mansion with her suitcase. Cruel headlines claimed she was taking advantage of the millionaire's emotional vulnerability. Malicious comments appeared by the second, calling her an opportunist, a manipulator, a homewrecker. The worst blow came when a sensationalist site revealed a traumatic event from Lily's past, an abusive ex-boyfriend she had reported years earlier. The article twisted the truth, turning the victim into a suspect, insinuating she had a history of emotional instability. Lily's world crumbled. Chris arrived home hours later, already aware of the scandal. He found Lily curled on the couch, holding her phone with trembling hands. When he approached, she lifted her tear-streaked face. "Christopher, why are they doing this to me?" He knelt in front of her, chest burning with guilt and anger. "Lily, I swear I'll fix this. None of this is true. I'm going to protect you." She shook her head, desperate. "They're talking about my past, about what happened to me. They're making it sound like I'm dangerous, like I'm the problem." Chris held her face in his hands. "You're not a problem. You're the best thing that's happened to this house." But at that moment, his phone rang. It was the company's main investor demanding explanations, then the lawyer, then Ethan's school. The pressure multiplied like violent waves. Chris paced back and forth, trying to answer endless calls, while Lily watched, sinking deeper by the second. In a moment of exhaustion, he turned to her and said something that changed everything. "Maybe we should take some time." He said it tired, without thinking, trying to relieve some of the external pressure. But to Lily, the words hit like a sentence. Her expression shattered. You mean I am the problem?" "That's not what I meant." He tried to pull back immediately. "Lily, please, listen to me." But she was already heading to the bedroom, locking the door so she wouldn't fall apart in front of him. Chris knocked, insisted, begged to talk, but Lily stayed silent until dawn. And when the sun rose, she was gone. She left behind only a note, written with trembling hands. "I never wanted to ruin your life. Thank you for everything." Chris found the empty room and felt the ground vanish beneath his feet. He had never felt so powerless. Not even during the divorce, not even during the losses that had accumulated over the years. He called her name throughout the house, ran to the gate, phoned every driver he knew. Nothing. Lily had disappeared as if she had never been there. And for the first time since becoming a father, Christopher Alden cried without being able to hold back the weight of the loss. Lily left Seattle before the sun even rose, carrying only a backpack with a few clothes and a heart shattered into pieces too small to mend. She didn't look back. She didn't want to see the mansion where she had found love, safety, and something that could have become her new life. Every step she took felt like tearing off another part of herself, but she kept walking anyway, as if running away were the only way to survive. 2 months passed. She now lived in Tacoma in a small furnished apartment with beige walls and the smell of old paint. The building was simple, noisy at night, but it was the only place where no one knew her. Lily worked as a clerk in a local bakery, a job that paid little but kept her busy enough not to think about the pain of leaving the people she loved behind. However, in the past few weeks, something had begun to change. She woke up nauseous, too tired, with unexplained dizziness. She thought it was stress, her body reacting to the recent trauma. But when her period was late, fear washed over her like ice. Lily bought a pharmacy test but didn't have the courage to use it right away. She stared at the box while her hands trembled. When she finally went into the bathroom of the tiny apartment, She felt her breath falter. She took the test with shaky legs and waited for the result, leaning against the sink, hugging herself. 2 lines. The world seemed to spin. Lily sat on the cold floor, hugging her knees, trying to hold back the tears, but they came like a storm. No, it can't be, she whispered, but she already knew it was true. She covered her face with her hands and cried with a muffled sound, as if trying to hide her pain so the neighbors wouldn't hear. Christopher's image rushed into her mind. His gray eyes, the way he held her face when he was vulnerable, his steady voice asking her not to be afraid. "Christopher," she murmured, her voice cracking. The next day, still with a heavy heart, Lily went to a small clinic on a busy street in Tacoma. The doctor was a kind middle-aged woman with red hair tied in a tight bun and thick framed glasses. She examined Lily carefully, speaking gently, trying to reassure her. After the ultrasound, the doctor gave a tender smile. "You're about 8 weeks pregnant. The baby is doing well." The image of that little speck on the monitor squeezed Lily's chest until it hurt. She placed a hand over her still flat belly, feeling the weight of responsibility, love, fear. I don't know what to do," she confessed, her voice trembling. The doctor set a hand on her shoulder. "You'll figure it out, one step at a time." On her way home, Lily walked slowly, looking at the busy street, at the people passing by, unaware that her life had just changed forever. She stopped on the sidewalk in front of a store window and stared at her own reflection. Green eyes full of tears, a tired face, the old coat she had bought at a thrift shop. It was a broken version of herself, but something inside her lit up, even if faintly. It was the life she carried. But fear followed right after. Fear of living another media nightmare. Fear of being judged, exposed, humiliated. Fear the media would accuse her of getting pregnant on purpose. Fear of hurting Ethan with another scandal. Fear of damaging Christopher, who had already suffered enough. She sat on a park bench, breathing deeply, letting the cold wind hit her face as she tried to gather her thoughts. "I want my baby to be born in peace," she told herself, trying to believe her own voice. "Without cameras, without judgment, without anyone trying to define who I am." A tear fell. She wiped it with her sleeve, but more followed. "I don't want to hurt Christopher. He doesn't deserve more pain, and I can't put Ethan through that again." The memory of the boy shattered her from the inside. Ethan calling her at night, trusting her, holding her hand as if she were his anchor. Lily gently held her belly, closing her eyes. "I'll raise my baby alone until I find the courage." When she opened her eyes, there was a new strength there, fragile but real, and that would be enough to keep her going. What she didn't know was that long before she found courage, fate would bring her face to face with the man she loved the most and feared seeing again. Lily returned to her small apartment in Tacoma with a heavy mind and aching body, but a firm resolve to keep moving forward. Reality didn't give her much room to dwell on the past. Her days began to blur together. Early mornings, long hours working at the bakery, and evening shifts doing odd jobs at a nearby laundromat. It was exhausting, but it was just enough to keep the bills paid and a few groceries in the fridge. The apartment was simple, white walls yellowed with time, wooden floors that creaked with every step. The sofa was narrow secondhand, and the bed squeaked with every movement. But it was there, in that small space, that Lily tried to rebuild her life. On the kitchen table, there was always a glass of water and a small pile of bills that arrived each week without fail. As the months passed, her belly began to grow and could no longer be hidden. 4 months went by, then 5, then 6. And the more the baby grew, the heavier the weight of everything she had left behind became: Ethan's affection, Chris's silent protection, the sense of belonging she once thought she'd found. But along with the love expanding inside her, guilt hovered like a constant shadow. She was afraid of the world, of reliving what had nearly destroyed her. Every time she thought of Christopher, she also remembered the cruel headlines, the manipulated photos, the public humiliation. One night, after a draining shift, Lily came home with sore feet and an anxious heart. She sat on the couch and ran her hand across her belly like she always did when she needed to calm herself. "It's okay, Mommy's here," she said softly, knowing it was more of a promise to herself and to the baby. Then she felt a tiny movement, gentle but real. The first kick. Lily inhaled sharply, overwhelmed, and let the tears fall freely. "You deserve a better world than the one I had," she whispered. "I'm going to try, my love." But no matter how hard she tried to convince herself she was doing the right thing, the ache in her chest remained. Some nights she would wake up with Christopher's name stuck in her throat. Other times, she'd find herself wondering how he would react if he found out she was pregnant. There were evenings when she sat at the edge of the bed, holding her turned-off phone, staring at the black screen like it was a mirror of all the choices she couldn't undo. "Does he hate me?" she whispered, her eyes brimming. Silence was her only answer. At 6 months pregnant, Lily began working as a receptionist at a small veterinary clinic. The uniform was simple, a blue t-shirt and black pants, but it helped conceal her growing belly for a few more weeks. The people there were kind, and no one asked too much about her personal life, something she silently gave thanks for every day. But on some mornings, as she walked down the street with her coat zipped up to her neck, Tacoma's cold wind carried back memories she tried hard to bury. The smell of coffee would take her back to evenings in the kitchen with Chris. A child's laughter on the sidewalk would pierce her heart with the memory of Ethan running through the mansion's halls. One day, while sorting documents at the clinic's front desk, a customer made a comment about Seattle, describing a popular cafe near the neighborhood where Chris lived. Lily froze for a few seconds. The practiced smile she'd worn for months faded. The customer noticed. "Are you okay?" she asked gently. "Yeah, just got a little dizzy," Lily replied, trying to catch her breath. But inside, the name of the city echoed like an open wound. Seattle, the place where she had loved, and suffered, and run from. That night, after closing the clinic, she walked to the bus stop and sat on the cold metal bench. The wind brushed against her face, lifting a few strands of blonde hair that had slipped from her bun. Lily caressed her belly and closed her eyes. "I miss him," she confessed in a whisper, as if finally admitting something she'd been hiding, even from herself. "But I'm scared, so scared." It was the truth. She missed Christopher in a way that hurt physically. But the thought of returning and facing the media, his ex-wife, the judgment made her heart seize. What she didn't know was that on the other side of the city, fate was quietly setting the stage for a reunion she had been running from. Something unexpected was about to happen, something no escape could prevent. Christopher couldn't handle the emptiness that consumed the mansion after Lily left. The days became too long, too quiet, too heavy. Ethan asked for her every night, his little eyes sad and lost. Chris did his best to comfort his son, but deep down, he knew. He was the one who needed comforting the most. Lily's absence felt like an open wound. Every corner of the house reminded him of her. The kitchen, where her soft laughter echoed. The living room, where she told stories to Ethan. The garden, where the boy chased after her. Everything felt darker, colder. He spent hours in his office but couldn't focus. The weight of regret followed him like a shadow. "I pushed her away when she needed me most," he murmured to himself, staring out the window. Without telling anyone, he hired investigators. "Find her," he said with a firm voice and hollow eyes. but don't pressure her. I just want to know if she's okay." Months passed. Leads came and went. It was as if Lily had been swallowed by the world. Every dead end felt like another blow to Chris's chest. Until 7 months after her disappearance, one of his contacts casually mentioned a veterinary clinic in Tacoma in need of sponsorship for an animal rehabilitation project. Chris didn't know why, but he agreed to visit in person. Maybe it was the need to fill the void. Maybe it was just the desperate urge to finally do something right after so many failures. When he arrived at the small clinic, the light blue walls gave off a cozy simplicity. The lobby was narrow, with plastic chairs, adoption flyers, and the faint smell of disinfectant mixed with pet food. Chris entered accompanied only by his assistant, but asked to wait alone at reception. That's when fate, silent and merciless, intervened. As he turned to sit, his eyes locked onto a familiar figure in the waiting room. Lily was sitting in the second chair, holding a folder of medical papers against her chest, breathing unevenly. Her face was paler, her blonde hair tied in a messy bun. But what gripped him was the unmistakable curve of her pregnant belly, 7 months along, pushing against the simple blue dress she wore. Chris froze. The world seemed to close in around them. "Lily?" His voice came out shaky, barely audible. She looked up slowly, as if terrified of what she'd see. When her eyes met his, the sounds of the clinic disappeared. There was no receptionist, no other clients, no traffic outside. There were only the two of them and everything they had lost. Lily's eyes filled with panic. She clutched the folder tighter as if it were a shield. Her entire body tensed. "Christopher, what are you doing here?" she asked in a low voice, almost pleading for it not to be real. Chris took 2 steps forward, then stopped when he saw the fear in her eyes. A fear he had helped create. I came to speak with the clinic director about a project. I had no idea you were here." His voice cracked, his chest tightened. Lily, my God, he couldn't stop looking at her belly. His breath shortened. His hands trembled. "You're pregnant." Lily turned her face away instantly, as if that could undo reality. "Christopher, please not here." He took another step, voice broken. "Is the baby mine?" Lily squeezed her eyes shut, as if the question had physically struck her. Tears began to fall, silent, unstoppable. She tried to breathe, to form words, but her heart was racing so fast it felt like it would burst from her chest. Her silence was the answer. And it hit Chris like a thunderclap. "Lily," his voice faltered with emotion, "why didn't you tell me? Why did you leave like that? How could you carry this alone all this time?" She finally lifted her face and her eyes were red, full of pain, fear, and guilt. "Because I didn't want to destroy your life again," she said, her voice broken. "Because I didn't want them to say I did it for money. Because I didn't want to hurt Ethan or leave you at the mercy of the media again. I just wanted to protect you." Christopher's heart tore. "Protect?" he echoed, barely holding his emotion. "Lily, you took everything from me. Every moment, every heartbeat of our baby." Her tears fell freely now. "I did what I thought was right," Chris ran his hands through his hair, anguished. "Lily, I never would have left you alone. Never." At that moment, the receptionist stepped out to call the next appointment, but when she saw the tension in the air, she quietly stepped back. They stood there in the middle of the clinic lobby, carrying the weight of months of silence, pain, and interrupted love. And for the first time since they'd been apart, they realized no amount of distance had been enough to erase what they felt. But the reunion, no matter how inevitable, was only the beginning of the storm to come. Christopher stood frozen for several seconds, staring at Lily as if the ground had just vanished beneath him. His breath grew heavy, deep, as if he were trying to contain something that no longer fit inside his chest. The small clinic's waiting room seemed to shrink around them, muffling every sound, every motion. There was a tension in the air, thick with months of pain, regret, and truths left unspoken. When he finally spoke, Chris's voice came out hoarse, trembling, weighed down with something he never let show. "I lost so much," he murmured, bringing his hands to his face as if trying to hold in the pain. "I should have looked for you sooner. I should have ignored everything, the headlines, the warnings, the threats. I should have broken the world to find you." Lily clutched the folder tighter to her chest, her round belly shifting gently beneath the fabric of her dress, as if their baby could feel the emotional storm brewing between his parents. She took a long breath, trying to hold herself together, but when she saw Chris shaking, something in her finally gave way. "Chris, please," she whispered, her voice faint, as if every word cost her strength. He shook his head, stepping back slightly as if needing air. His gray eyes, always controlled, now shimmered, vulnerable and wet. "I failed you," he said, voice cracking. "I failed when I didn't protect you enough. When I let the media tear you apart. When I let my ex-wife turn you into a target. When I let you walk out of that house and didn't run after you." He looked up, devastated. "I failed our child." At the words "our child," Lily's chest clenched painfully. It was like a blade slicing through every wall she'd tried to build. "Chris," she whispered, stepping toward him. But he was already drowning in a rage not directed at her, but at himself, and at everything he hadn't stopped. "I had the power to stop it." He hit his forehead with his palm, frustrated. "I could have used my name, my money, my lawyers, anything. But I let you go through hell alone. I watched the world crucify you, and then I didn't do enough." Lily's throat closed. Hot tears spilled down her cheeks, and this time she didn't even try to hide them. "I did what I thought was right to protect you," she said, struggling to speak. "To protect Ethan and our baby. If I had stayed, the media would have destroyed your professional life. They would have said I trapped you on purpose. They would have ruined your reputation. They would have hurt your son." Her fingers trembled as she wiped her tears. "I couldn't let that happen. And so you just disappeared?" he asked, his voice full of pain. "Without letting me fight for you? Without giving me a chance to be a father, to be anything?" Lily instinctively placed her hand over her belly, protective, maternal. "I was afraid," she admitted. "Afraid of losing control of my life again. Afraid the world would tell me who I was. Afraid that you'd look at me and see a burden. Afraid I'd make you regret everything." Those words hit Chris like a blow to the chest. He took a hesitant step toward her, as if scared she might vanish right before his eyes. "I would never regret you," he said firmly, even through the tremble in his voice. "I regret what I didn't do, not what we felt." Lily looked down, and a single tear dropped onto her hand. The baby moved again, as if responding to her emotions. Chris noticed, and his expression softened. He brought a hand to his face, trying to steady his breathing. "Can I?" he asked in a whisper. "Can I touch?" Lily hesitated. For months, she had built walls around herself, against the media, against fear, and most of all, against her own feelings. But in that moment, standing before the man she had always loved, the walls began to crumble. Her heart pounding, she nodded slowly. Christopher stepped closer, gently, reverently, as if approaching something sacred. He placed his hand on her belly, fingers trembling, eyes filled with tears. When he felt the baby shift beneath his touch, a soft gasp escaped his lips. "He's here," he murmured, his voice cracked. "Our son, he's really here." Lily sobbed. Chris, too. There, in the middle of the clinic, they stood motionless for long seconds, bound by a life neither of them could deny, though both had feared to face it. Christopher looked up, meeting her gaze with a mix of pain, love, and a promise. "I won't lose you again," he said, voice steady. But neither of them knew the hardest battles and deepest truths were still waiting ahead. Christopher stood there with his hand resting gently on Lily's belly, as if afraid that any sudden movement might break the fragile magic of their reunion. When she finally took a deep breath and stepped back, he understood. He had to move carefully. He couldn't demand answers, nor ask for something she wasn't ready to give. He had already lost her once to fear and haste. He wouldn't make that mistake again. "I'm not going to pressure you," Christopher said quietly, but with steady sincerity. "I just want to be around if you'll let me." Lily hugged the folder against her chest, still trembling. "I don't know how to do this, Chris. I'm scared." "I'm scared too," he admitted, stepping just close enough for her to feel his presence without it overwhelming her. "But we have time. And I'm not going anywhere this time." In the days that followed, Christopher kept that promise. The first appointment after their reunion was silent and tense. Lily hesitated to let him know, but in the end sent a short message. Within minutes, he was at the clinic door, wearing dark jeans and a plain jacket. No security, no luxury car, no spotlight. Just him. A man trying to fix what he'd allowed to break. When the nurse called Lily's name, Chris stood too but paused at the door. "If I can come in, great. If you'd prefer I wait, I will." Lily swallowed the knot in her throat. "You can come," she whispered. During the ultrasound, Christopher kept his eyes on the screen with a reverence that made Lily's heart ache. When the baby's heartbeat echoed through the monitor, he covered his mouth, overwhelmed. "It's the most beautiful sound I've ever heard," he murmured. Lily looked away, trying to hide her tears, but he noticed. He didn't comment. He didn't reach out. He just stayed present. In the following days, Christopher quietly moved behind the scenes. He paid for her appointments and tests anonymously, so Lily only discovered it when she went to the counter and was told someone had already taken care of it. When she tried to argue, he simply said, "Let me do this for you, for him. It's the least I owe." It wasn't a request for closeness. It was an act of reparation. He began visiting her more often, but never without warning. He always texted first, "Can I stop by for a bit? Need anything from the store? Are you okay today?" Lily started to notice a pattern. He never showed up empty-handed. Sometimes it was a warm soup, sometimes prenatal vitamins, sometimes carefully folded gender-neutral baby clothes. One night, she was sitting on the narrow sofa, struggling to assemble a second-hand crib she'd bought. Christopher arrived a few minutes later, carrying a bag of groceries. When he saw her kneeling on the floor, surrounded by screws and uneven planks, he smiled faintly. "Need a hand?" "I got it," she replied stubbornly, pulling at a crooked board. Chris crouched beside her, looking at the crumpled instructions. "You sure?" "The manual's upside down," he said, with a soft, disarming tone. Lily looked at the paper and let out a tired laugh, the first real laugh since they'd found each other again. "I'm so exhausted I didn't even notice. Then let me do it." He began adjusting the parts gently. "You've done so much alone. Let me take over a bit." She didn't answer right away, just watched him fasten the screws, brow furrowed in focus, jaw tight. He wasn't the rigid millionaire she'd met at the mansion. He was a man kneeling on the floor of a tiny apartment, quietly assembling an old crib without complaint. "You've changed," Lily said without thinking. Chris paused for a second, then resumed screwing the bolt in place. "No, I'm just trying to be the man I should have been from the start." The words hit her harder than she expected. Days later, when she had a panic attack at night, Christopher answered the call before the first ring finished. "Lily? What's wrong?" I can't breathe," she sobbed. "Stay on the line." "I'm coming." 14 minutes later, he knocked at her door, breathless, coat open, hair tousled from the wind. He didn't say much. He just pulled her gently into his arms and let her cry. "I'm here," he whispered like a mantra. "I'm not going anywhere." "Not this time." Lily rested her forehead against his chest and wept until her body calmed, feeling something she hadn't felt in a long time: safety. And slowly, day by day, love began to grow again between them. Not the impulsive love of the beginning, but a mature love. Quiet, exposed, rebuilt with care. Lily began to see him differently, not as the powerful man behind a tech empire, but as someone who faced pain without looking away, who apologized and meant it, who was learning to be a father again, and, more than anything, learning to be better. Christopher, in turn, watched her every reaction with respect. He didn't push, didn't demand. He simply stayed, present, honest, constant. One afternoon, as they walked home from the clinic, Chris stopped and turned to her. "I know I don't have the right to ask for anything now, but I want you to know I'm ready to build this with you, however you want, on your terms." Lily took a deep breath, feeling the baby move as if in response to those words. "I believe in you, Christopher," she said softly. "Maybe for the first time I really believe." He smiled, a small smile, but one filled with hope. And for the first time since it all began, Lily allowed herself to believe she could be happy by his side, not as an employee, not as the woman who ran away, but as someone who was learning to love and to be loved. But fate, ever unpredictable, still had one final test to deliver, one that would push every emotion to the limit before their baby arrived. The final month of pregnancy hit Lily like a whirlwind. The nights grew longer, the aches more intense, the fears more real. But this time, she wasn't alone. Christopher was there, in every breath of anxiety, in every sleepless night, in every slow step toward the clinic. He never missed a beat. Every day, at the same time, he knocked on her door with a calm expression that seemed to say, "You won't face any of this alone." On the night it all began, rain pounded against the window. Lily woke up with a sharp pain that shot through her abdomen. Her whole body trembled, and for a second, she thought she was alone again. Then she remembered Christopher had insisted on sleeping on the sofa, saying, "I can't sleep knowing you might need me." "Chris," she called, her voice weak, cracked by fear and pain. He jumped up immediately, eyes wide, hair messy, breathing fast. "Lily, is it happening?" She nodded, holding her belly with both hands. "I think so." Within minutes, he helped her into a coat, grabbed the hospital bag packed since week 36, and carefully placed it in the car. He drove through the rain-soaked streets like every second mattered, checking the rearview mirror constantly, trying to mask his panic. "Breathe with me," he said gently, matching her rhythm. "I'm here, I promise." Lily clutched the seatbelt, focusing on his voice. "I'm scared, Chris." "I'm scared too," he admitted, placing a hand over hers, "but we're doing this together." At the hospital, Lily was taken to the delivery room. Christopher asked permission to enter and never left her side. He held her hand tightly, like their connection was the only anchor they had in that moment. The hours dragged on. Lily was drenched in sweat, moaning, crying. The pain ripped through her, and sometimes she closed her eyes so tight that tears slipped out without her knowing. Chris didn't move. "I'm here," he whispered over and over. "Look at me when it hurts. I'm your safe place." She tried to focus on his voice. "Chris, what if something goes wrong?" "It won't," he replied, his confidence fragile but real. You're the strongest woman I've ever met." When the final moment arrived, Lily was exhausted. Her breathing was heavy, nearly ragged. "I can't do this anymore." "Yes, you can." His eyes sparkled with tears. "Please, Lily, our son is coming. He needs you." With one last effort, the baby's cry pierced the room. Lily's hands flew to her face, sobbing with relief and overwhelming emotion. Christopher lowered his hands from his head, breathing like he'd just survived a storm. The doctor placed the baby in Lily's arms. She looked at the tiny pink face, still trembling, still crying, and her heart exploded. "Oh God, he's perfect." Chris stepped closer, his eyes glassy, breath catching. "Can I?" he asked, still afraid to cross a line. Lily handed him the baby carefully, trusting him more than she trusted herself in that moment. Christopher held his son like he was made of light. When he looked down at him, his expression shattered. "I can't believe it," he whispered. "I can't believe you're real, that I get this second chance." He looked at Lily, his gray eyes shining like never before. "I promise to be present. I promise to be better. I promise to never let you go again." Lily smiled, worn out but filled with a deep peace. "We got lost, but love found us again." A few hours later, in the hospital room, their baby slept in the transparent bassinet, tiny fists clenched, chest rising softly. Lily reclined on the bed, pale but glowing. Christopher sat beside her, kissed her hand. "I'm not perfect," he said quietly, "but I want to be a man worthy of you." She intertwined her fingers with his. "I don't want perfection. I want truth, and you're giving me that." They sat in silence, watching their son sleep. The hospital's soft lighting bathed the white walls, and the distant sound of footsteps and beeping monitors wrapped the room in peace. It was there they finally understood what life had been trying to teach them all along. Love doesn't survive on passion alone. It demands courage. It demands forgiveness. It demands daily choices. It demands presence. And for the first time, they were both ready. In the days that followed, Christopher arranged for Lily and the baby to move into a larger home, but only after asking if she wanted that. Lily agreed, but with one condition: let's build this together. From the beginning, he smiled, together, always. The family they formed wasn't perfect. It had scars, fears, and a past to heal, but it was real. And every day, every diaper change, every sleepless night, every quiet gesture of affection was a living reminder of what they were rebuilding. As they left the hospital, Christopher gently placed their baby in the car seat, helped Lily into the car, and before closing the door, looked at her with quiet tenderness. Our new beginning starts now, and that's how they learn the greatest lesson of all, that love only truly blooms when there's courage to begin again, even after everything. And now, I want to hear from you. What did you think of this intense story full of love, heartbreak, and second chances? Leave your rating from 0 to 10 in the comments below. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, share it with someone who loves a good romance, and subscribe to the channel to catch all the next chapters. And before you go, get ready. I've picked another heartwarming story just for you. You won't want to miss it.